thing you're obsessing about and you're dreaming about and you're daydreaming about, if you can't get it out of your head, you've just got to do it, haven't you?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just torture.
Hello, Flo. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. I love the concept. Just the title got me excited about the conversation that we could have. So thank you for having me.
If I'm not mistaken, you're a qualified coach.
Yes, for my sins, I am. I am not practicing loads at the moment in kind of external capacity because, as I'm sure we'll get onto, there have been many pivots in my career. Coaching has been one of them and is still forms a part of what I do. But yeah, keeping up with my qualification, and it's something that I love and very passionate about.
Amazing. I am planning to pick your brain about all the things, and that coaching perspective, I'm sure, will definitely come in handy, and you can give our listeners tons of advice from that perspective. So very excited.
Fantastic.
Well, we'll jump straight in. So my first question for you is, before your pivot, when you met someone new, how did you respond to the question, what do you do?
It's such a great question. And I think before my pivot, I wasn't aware of how triggering that question can actually be. And that is something that comes up so much in coaching. So I did career coaching was what I focused on, and having like a real definition of what you do can really feel difficult for a lot of people. And it was for me as well, because I enjoyed my career, but I wasn't really connected to it. I would say I had a job rather than a career. I think there was just a lot of waffle about kind of the bits that I did, kind of bits that the company did, quite aware that lots of people probably didn't understand what I was doing. You know how people ask you what you do and then they often switch off unless it's something that they instantly recognize.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So trying to like have that balance between getting them to understand, but also trying to get myself to understand in those moments, like, well, what do I actually do?
It's a question that sometimes can feel quite existential. It's like,
Absolutely.
what do I do? Yeah.
Yeah, especially because I think in today's sort of society, we set so much of a store by people's careers as being a really defining part of them. And for some people, that's the case. And for some people, it's actually not. And that's totally fine. But we feel that pressure that we need to be really connected to our jobs, or that our jobs say something about us. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I definitely, before my pivots, multiple, felt like that was something that I, just kind of bumbled through.
I resonate with that so much. My default response every time I was asked that was like a deep sigh, and then that slightly glossing over of the eyes, trying to like scramble together and put something together that fit the context, because I've always been someone that's worn multiple hats. So I'm always trying to juggle and figure out on the spot like what makes sense to say and what should I not include, and all of that. Yeah,
So what does the person I'm speaking to want to hear? What's going to be interesting? What do I also want to hear? And sometimes you'd finish it and you're like, is that an accurate representation of what I do? And likely it probably wouldn't be.
Exactly that. So away from that then, what are you up to now?
Yes, so now I am working alongside my husband, growing a digital marketing and print marketing company called Amplified Schools, and we help predominantly state schools in the London and Greater London area with their marketing. So we're really looking to spread the good news about the things that they do. Schools are amazing places, but they obviously don't have the capacity and budget for full-time marketing teams, even though they need the support to get their words out there. So we've been growing that for the past 2 years now.
That's incredible. And that's such a specific niche as well. What's the background? How did you guys get into that?
Yeah, so I have to give credit to my husband and business partner, Alex, that it was very much his brainchild. He was a secondary school teacher in Hackney for 8 years, absolutely loved it, loved his year group, took them all the way through to year 11. And when we decided to relocate out of central London to the sticks, there weren't as many job opportunities that kind of excited him like his role at Cardinal Pole did. And so he, as part of his leadership responsibilities there, had been doing their social media and had been doing marketing for the school, and it had been going really, really well. And he was like, well, I wonder whether other schools need this, and started to put feelers out there. And as it turns out, they absolutely did. So that's kind of how it began. And he began as a sole trader, and I was running my coaching business, obviously having the freelance flexibility. And, it started to be like, oh, Flo, could you help me with this? Or, oh, what would you do here? And that became sort of a day or two a week, became 3 days a week. And then we went all in as a couple to run the business together.
Oh, I absolutely love that. And I love the fact that he came from a place of having intimate knowledge of what the need was and what the problem space was. I find that when you're starting a business, that's such an important aspect of it.
So important, I think, one, like you said, finding that uber niche. I mean, it is. So people are like, what, marketing for schools? Like, why do schools need marketing? And you explain it to them and they go, oh, okay. But really, that is our USP. You know, there are loads of amazing digital marketing, print marketing companies out there,
Yeah.
but very few of them have the experience of working directly in a school at such a, like you said, such a kind of intimate level.
Yeah.
Two members of our team are also ex-TAs, so they really get it as well. And that's been so helpful for us.
Incredible. So you're a co-founder of a startup now. I mean, that's
Yeah.
huge. What was the thing that sparked the idea of a pivot? And then what what was the catalyst that then turned that thought into action?
Yeah, so I think for this, it was sort of like backtrack it a bit to my first pivot, which was leaving a 9 to 5 to set up my coaching business,
Uh-huh.
because that was the pivot that caused other pivots. Once you start, it's quite hard to stop. And then what's in our case, which is really lovely, is that Alex says that a large part of him feeling that he could pivot from
Yeah.
teaching into running his own business was because he'd seen me do it in coaching. And I think when people see others making these changes, we start to build more confidence around the possibilities that we can take charge of our own careers.
Absolutely.
So the initial pivot was my decision to leave my 9 to 5, which really came out of a mixture of circumstance. I was on sabbatical, which was something I'd always wanted to take, and I was traveling and found out that the company that I was working for was going to be doing some structural changes and potentially making some layoffs, which would make redundancies initially just available to anyone who wanted to take them. And it just felt like a bit of a sign. I had completed my training by then to become a coach. I was loving everything I was learning about coaching and felt so much more connected to that as a potential career for me in terms of something that really met my skills and interests,
Yeah.
rather than just something that I could be competent at, something that I felt like I could really flourish in.
Yeah.
And yeah, the ability to be paid to leave a job comes up very rarely. And it was something that I felt like, as I said, a bit of a sign of like, well, if we're going to give this a go, now is the time to do it. And that was that first pivot.
I think that's such a good way to think about it and to frame it as the opportunity that it was.
Yeah.
And obviously, it sounds like things really lined up in a fantastic way for you in terms of taking sabbatical, finishing your coaching course, and then that option to take voluntary redundancy coming about. That feels like the perfect series of events to gear you up for that pivot. But I know that for a lot of people, you know, I was speaking to other people about redundancy, and when that happens,
Yeah.
the thing that usually happens is we personalize it and it becomes a you thing, and something's wrong with you, and that's why this happened.
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I'm not going to lie, like obviously as soon as I found out the company was not in the best position, I had
Yeah.
a big cry and a big panic because
Yeah, of
it's
course.
definitely been a bit of a reframe and a hindsight that's made me go, wow, what a fortunate series of events.
Yeah.
But in the moment, of course, it's crazy stressful. If you've never known, as I had never known, anything other than a monthly paycheck coming through very nicely as expected,
Yeah.
and you've got a mortgage to pay, it's really intense. And I know that for a lot of people currently, you know, redundancy is very real. I think pretty much most people you speak to these days have either been through a process or been made redundant at least once in their careers. I know people already only in their mid-30s that have been made redundant multiple times. And yeah, I think it's such an important point that you make about how we can tend to internalize these things when there are factors that are so far out of our control.
Yeah.
We all know that the world is a little bit crazy at the moment, and the pressures that companies have to deal with, which I'm starting to appreciate as a business owner now, having employees, how difficult it is to make some of these decisions. And yeah, we've not been, fortunately, we're in a period of growth. We've not had to make those changes, but we've had to make some difficult decisions. And it is so unlikely and so rarely a them thing or a personal thing. It's a baseline business decision that has to be made, and it feels really harsh. But I think the more people can take a step back and look at actually what they've contributed, the work that they've done, the skills that they have, and see the bigger picture, the better. Because yeah, it's definitely not them, and it's just a really difficult working environment at the moment for a lot of people.
When I was thinking about what Pivots and Paydays in this community was going to be, that played a big part of it, because I think you're right. We're seeing lots of things in the labour market that are becoming increasingly difficult. And I think we're going to see more of that. Things might get worse before they get better, and reframing that conversation. And actually, it's always easier to connect the dots backwards, right? But when you're in it, to be able to reframe that as an opportunity and something that you can own and take control of and really control how you navigate that pivot space. I think if we can have more conversations like that, really transparent conversations, the better off we're going to be. I'm hoping that's what conversations like this continue to do.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I think there's two things in that are so important. I think we can, in a employed situation, give a lot of control over to our employer. We feel lucky to be employed by that company. We feel like we owe them a lot. And, sometimes that's really good. And we are, we're lucky. We are lucky to have jobs. Absolutely. And some employers are fantastic and we do owe them a lot. But I don't think we often owe them as much as people feel in terms of the indebtedness. And the loyalty is a wonderful thing, but it's got to go both ways. And I think we can assume that because you're in a 9 to 5, that's a stable position to be in. And I think we've just learned that that is not necessarily the case. So a lot of the things that I did as a coach was encouraging people to be constantly looking for opportunities, constantly networking, kind of never not looking for a job, whether you're 5 weeks or 5 years into a job, always keeping things ticking along rather than allowing them to go stagnant, feeling that you're in a position of safety when we know that that can change quite quickly, even in some companies that you'd think would be the most stable. And the other part of it is just that a lot of people said when I made my pivot how brave it was or how risky it was. Different words with different meanings were used to describe it. But I really saw when I was a freelancer and running our own company now, how you can put yourself and you can manifest yourself into a much more stable position working for yourself than in a company. It's how you look at it. It doesn't have to be the risky option, pivoting or doing your own thing. It can actually be the thing that can bring you a lot of stability, whether it's something that you're doing full time or whether it's something you're growing on the side. If you're spreading your bets, basically, you are making yourself, you're building yourself a more stable foundation for your whole career. And I think that's something that people forget. They think, working for yourself, freelancing, setting up a business, risk. And of course it can be, but it can also be something that is incredibly liberating.
It's so interesting because when we think of risk, people often think of only the downside part of risk, but risk doesn't only mean downside, right? It can also mean upside. It can also mean opportunity. It's just an event that you don't know where it's going to go, but it can be both, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. I did this amazing training with a company called the Uncertainty Experts, and they really reframe risk and uncertainty in a way that I think is so helpful about how, pretty much everything good or useful or revelatory for us comes from a position of putting ourselves into the unknown, taking a risk. When we look back, it's those moments that are way more defining than when we followed a set path or played it safe. And I think it's great for us to take a look at our own lives and go, okay, when did I push the boat out? Or when did I do something that other people thought was risky or that I thought was risky? And what was the result? Because like you said, we can make it sound really negative, and so often the results are not, especially when you can look back and have hindsight and go, actually, that led to something really positive.
Oh, I love this. I absolutely love it. That's really good advice. So in the context of your pivot then, how did you approach decision making? Because obviously you've got a lot of noise, external noise sometimes coming in and saying, oh, that's really risky, or oh, are you sure about doing X, Y, and Z? How do you approach decision making and getting to that place of certainty for yourself?
Oh, it's such a good question. I think I was really fortunate to have built up a fantastic community of supporters. So I had a lot of people who were really positive about me trying this, basically, which surprised me because I had not up until that point ever defined myself as a risk taker. I talk a lot on my own social media and in like talks that I've done about being a goody and being a female goody and the limitations I think that had on me, especially early in my career, going through university. And sort of breaking out of that. And this pivot really felt like a kind of severing of who I thought I was and actually who I could be. But the people around me were incredibly supportive, and especially Alex, my partner, and that made it so much easier to make the decision to do it. I have to say there was probably also a bit of I am a planner, and I do a lot of research and I go into detail, but then I often find myself having like a moment where I just go, do you know what? I'm just going to have to do this because no amount of pre-planning is going to tell me whether or not this thing is going to work. I've just got to try. And I think in that moment, those things aligned where I just went, okay, well, this is the decision. So there wasn't a sort of perfect algorithm for how I got there, but I think it was just thinking about something enough, when that thing you're obsessing about and you're dreaming about and you're daydreaming about, if you can't get it out of your head, you've just got to do it, haven't you? Otherwise it's just torture.
No, it is. When you know intrinsically that you want to do something, you're like living and breathing it. It's always on your mind, even when you're doing other things. It starts off as a bit of a whisper that you can ignore. And a lot of us do. It's easy to because that's the normal thing. And then if you keep ignoring it, eventually it starts like yelling at you. And then you can't focus on other things. And at that point, if you let it get to that point, it becomes almost painful to not do it. So I think you're completely right when it comes to just giving it a go. You know, what's the worst that can happen? Of course, there has to be that planning element. Of course, there has to be that practical element. But if you are in a position to, I think there's a lot of value that just comes from just doing the thing and just trying it and seeing what happens.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you asked that question, what's the worst that can happen? But how rarely do we ask ourselves, what's the best that could happen?
Yes.
We're constantly, like we said earlier, we're looking for the negatives, we're noticing the negatives. We're not going, well, what if this thing works? What would life be like if this thing that I'm dreaming about actually works?
Often that's like a scary thing to think about sometimes, isn't it? Because you then have to think about, what would it demand of me? What would I have to change about the things that I am comfortable doing and the person I'm comfortable being? Because oftentimes when you have that thing that you want to do or that thing that you want to incorporate or try, it's going to require that you also have to level up in some way, learn some new skills, put some time into something, put some investment into something. And that, I think, can maybe be a bit of a scary thought that feels a little bit unending for some people, and that can be a deterrent sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think success is as scary as failure. I don't actually.
Brilliant, yeah.
It really is, because you do well, you prove to yourself that you can do this thing, but you've got to keep doing it. And like you said, it demands more of you. You have to level up to that person that can be the person that succeeds or that gets to the end result that you're looking for. And I think a lot of people that I spoke to, especially through coaching, and I was mostly coaching women, they were as scared of doing well and getting everything they wanted as they were of being a failure and everyone thinking they were a disaster, which was, you know, everyone's secret feeling, but it obviously never happens.
Yeah, and how debilitating is that? It's like, what do you do? And I guess that's what keeps a lot of people in the space where you just do what you've always done, because at least then all the change isn't required.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we are the masters. And I think evolutionary, it's partly our biology. We want to stay safe. We want to be in the comfort zone. It's a good place to be. But actually, I think as well, we don't have to be so polarized about it. It doesn't have to be success and failure. It can be something in the middle, which is just us like trying to grow, trying to stretch out that comfort zone so it gets a bit bigger and a bit bigger, rather than it keeping us, as you said, kind of stuck in a place or not being able to pursue something.
The second thing that you said that I wanted to dig in on, and I have seen your post about this, and I always like them because I'm like, yes, she gets it. It's this archetype of the goody-goody, particularly around the female goody-goody. And I see it a lot. I have a lot of conversations with women where there's the perception that I've always done what's expected of me. I've made all the right decisions. I've gone through and I've done what everyone else expected me to do. And now I'm at this place in my life where I'm not happy. What do I do about this? What do you say to that? And what are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's something that the more I talk about it, the more people have that response you said, where you're like, yes, like either that is you or you know that person. And it's so common and it is so debilitating, because up until I graduated, I literally thought I got things sorted. Like, you know, I did everything I was told, I was ticking off my homework. And then you come into business and you see people who didn't do any of that, who like dropped out of school, or who were the naughty kids or the cool kids, didn't really care. They're doing amazingly. They've got great careers. They're well liked and respected. They take these risks and they do so with confidence. And it felt like a totally alien thing to me. And the advice that I give to people and what I speak to people about a lot is just starting to find the little things that take us out of our comfort zones, getting okay with failure. And again, I said, you know, I don't like failure. I don't success as words, you know, they are too polarizing, but I think that is a real fear for anyone that doesn't feel like they've had a big failing in their life, or can talk about, oh yeah, I absolutely flunked my A levels, or like I passed my degree by the skin of my teeth, or, you know, my first job I got fired from after day 2, whatever the example is. I think that builds up such a resilience and such an ability to go, I will recover if things don't go well. But if you actually haven't had that, which I think a lot of people haven't, or they've had it in small ways, but nothing that's really kind of hit them in their psyche, that is the biggest fear. And so we're just held back constantly by that fear. So talk to clients a lot about just starting really small, just doing things that you know you're not going to be good at. And that might be like, for one of my clients, it was knitting. She really wanted to knit, and she started off and she was she couldn't really do it.
Low stakes. It's low stakes, isn't it?
It's so low stakes. But that consistency of showing up to learn, to become good. Because again, we have this horrible thing where I think it can start at schools where it's like, well, if I'm not good at that thing naturally gifted, then I
Yes.
can't be good at that thing. We're really bad at embedding the growth mindset into young people and older people.
Yeah.
And that is what I think people who have experienced growth and getting better at something and working hard to achieve something that didn't come so easily naturally, that really sets them apart later on. And I think that's something that the goody tries to avoid, is like anything that they're not naturally good at, because they don't want to see those failings, because they've never been encouraged. Hard work was encouraged, but I think, it was all based on grades and, these success metrics rather than just the effort of trying. And that's what I try and encourage people to do, is start with the smaller stakes, so that as the stakes grow, you build your confidence to be able to take on more. And even just noticing if you resonate with any of those qualities, or that is me, and I do think it's held me back, can be a huge step towards starting to turn the tables on that sort of expected behaviour.
You're right. It's almost, it's a muscle that you build. And if you have had no practice at failing, then you've also had no practice at knowing that you're going to be fine, and knowing that you're going to wake up the next day and the world's going to keep moving, and you're going to be fine.
Exactly.
I'm really glad you're speaking to that archetype more, because I think you're right. Lots of people can relate to that, or know someone who operates in that way. So hopefully we can start having more of a conversation around it.
And it isn't necessarily a gendered thing. And I have had men come up to me after talks and go, that is me. I really felt like that as well.
Yeah.
But I think it is so much more encouraged and expected in girls, this kind of politeness, this way of being that can be a gift, but can also very much be a curse.
Yeah. I'm going to take us back to your pivot. The practical elephant in the room, or so to speak, is during a pivot where maybe you've been used to, like you said in the beginning, that check every month, and there's that security there.
Yeah.
If you go to a pivot and you're not in a full-time role anymore, that's a worry, right? That's a real barrier for a lot of people. So for you, how did you approach that? How did you keep the lights on during your pivot?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I want to caveat it with a few kind of acknowledgements of some privileges that I have in my life that were able to make it possible. The first one is being someone that is part of a dual income household. So having two people working. I've got a lot of friends that are not in that and have faced similar situations. It's totally different. It's really, that is such a challenge. But if you know that you've got someone that can help you out with the mortgage for a few months, and that's the relationship that you've got, that can give you a lot of peace of mind. The other one is having a property that is like rent controlled, because we own it. So we knew what we were locked into for our mortgage. I hadn't over mortgaged. And so we knew we had that affordability. Again, if you've got rents that are going like this, it becomes really difficult. And that's not to discourage anyone who are not in those situations, but I think it's useful and important that we talk about people's contexts, because otherwise comparison is, as we know, the thief of joy, but also the thief of realistic expectations of what we can do. So I had those two things, which I think were really, really helpful. And obviously we've touched on having some money coming through from my redundancy, which basically for me, I knew, so I took redundancy in December, and I knew that I could cover all of my bills and my side of things kind of 50-50 up until the end of March. So I had a few months to get this business off the ground. And that was what I was working on. I did also look for other kind of part-time jobs or gigs that would be a little bit more supportive, but I was really keen to throw myself fully into this pivot. So I sort of didn't want to have a job that would take up any headspace that I thought was going to be too important. I was looking at things like training to become a barista, or whether I could do some childcare things, or anything that would boost up my income, but that wouldn't take away the brain power that I felt I needed for this particular project. So I knew I had this set amount of time, and then I was preparing what my backups would be and where I would find them. And that in itself took a kind of self-re-educating for someone that had graduated and gone on to have a really good job and a good paying salary, to then be considering, okay, I want to finance my dream project by working in a cafe or doing something that could for a lot of people be perceived as a step back. That felt like it had to take a lot to get to that place where that felt like it would be an okay situation for me, or that's what I needed to do, and how I would not justify it to people, but how I would be able to explain that to people. Because I think that was something that I really struggled with initially, was, okay, well, if this doesn't go right and I've got to take a job that maybe isn't as aligned with what people think of me, what will happen?
That is the bit that no one really wants to admit. But I'm really glad you said that, because if we talk to, I don't know, a high percentage of people who are doing pivots, I'm sure they will 100% resonate with so much of what you're saying, down to the part where even when you're thinking about, okay, practically speaking, I'm going to have to take on maybe a part-time role or something. I want it to be a role that doesn't take up all of my brain power, because then how do I give enough of myself to the idea that I'm trying to bring to life? And I think it's a real juggling act. And then you have to factor in the element of what are people going to say, back to that failure point, right? That fear of failure point. What would people say if this doesn't work out? Because it's all well and good if everything goes right and you're
Yeah.
talking about the story after you're connecting the dots backwards, but when you're in it, you just don't know where it's going to end. And I think it takes real bravery to be able to commit to something and believe in your ability enough to keep pushing and keep going. So kudos to you for doing that.
Oh, well, thank you. And I do believe it's literally the only way. I think part of the not wanting something to take up the brain power is that I knew that the goody in me would give too much to something else. I'd want to be really good at that as well. Whereas I was accepting that I'd be a passable barista and I'd enjoy meeting people and engaging and getting out of the house, and that those things would feed in. But yeah, it's really difficult, because you do have to go through a lot of self-reflection and a lot of unlearning of expectations, I think, when you make a pivot, because it's kind of like all cards are off the table. We've got to do what we need to do to see if this can work, because if you don't give it the best chance possible, then it's not going to get off the ground.
I think as well, I am such an advocate for picking up something else or something part-time while you are in your pivot, because even if you've got a chunk of savings, the most unfun thing is watching that chunk of savings dwindle while nothing else is coming in for that period of time. It is an activity that I have gone through myself. I can attest to the fact that it is not fun. It's not fun. It's quite stressful, because when I was in my pivot and I was doing a boot camp, and I had savings, a similar situation to you. I had savings, and I've got my partner, and he was amazing, and he helped me through that time so much. But I was still having to watch my savings like dwindle month on month. And although that meant that bills were paid and I was fine, it was still like, oh, I really wish I had some money coming in to replace that. So I ended up doing like a series of part-time jobs that I actually really enjoyed. And I picked up lots of different skills in that respect that I use to this day, even after I've made my pivot. So I really do advocate for that, and people just letting those inhibitions go and just do it. Just do the thing. If that's what you need to do at that time, don't be embarrassed about that. Like, you're still you. You're still you while you're doing that new job, regardless of what people think, what people say. Like, do what's best for you.
100%. And I'm a big believer that there is literally no such thing as bad experience. So even it's kind of hilarious that I'm doing what I do now with Alex, because my first job was in a digital marketing agency. There was a lot about that job that I did not like, and I thought it was just a means to an end. It was my first job out of uni. I was trying to get out of there as soon as I could, and I didn't think I would take a lot of learning from it. Little did I know, now working in my own small marketing agency, the amount that I learned during that time is huge. And I'm very, very grateful for it, even though there were days where I got up and I was miserable because I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. It really, if you're someone that is taking lessons from sort of everything you do, and you're a sponge and you're absorbing things, it might be that you work in a job and you make an amazing contact, or it's your new boss that puts you in touch with the person that then, all of these things that can come together. Really, like, exposure is the key to success. And however we're getting that, and if we're making some money while we're doing it, cracking.
Exactly that. Other than money and obviously time constraints that we've described, were there any other resource constraints that you came across while you were making your pivot, and how did you get creative to get around them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think with coaching, some of the biggest resources with coaching was just investment in myself. So paying for coaches for myself. There's a big thing in coaching. How can you expect someone to pay you for coaching if you're not willing to pay for coaching? And it's not that you need to have coaching all the time, but I think when you're making a big pivot like that in your life, a coach could be really helpful, especially if you're setting up a business, which I was. And so that resource of going, okay, one, I have way less money coming in than I used to, and two, this person who I really want to work with is asking for quite a lot of that money. And how do I feel about that? And a lot of that was kind of the mindset of believing I'm going to get this back. This is an investment in myself. And whatever we're doing, whether it's paying someone to support us or whether it is giving an idea a go, it can feel like I'm investing in myself, and we're really uncomfortable with that. And getting comfortable with that was quite a process, but really changed a lot about my money mindset that
Yeah.
I think was really, really positive. So that was probably the biggest resource thing when it came to the coaching pivot, was just,
Yeah.
yeah, being happy to spend money on me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really fair point, actually. What have you learned most about yourself as you're transitioning into those spaces?
I think it relates to the like no experience is bad experience, is
Mm,
that so many of my skills are transferable. And I think we talk about transferable skills all the time. We use it like a buzzword every time you go to like how to write a CV and all of that. We think about transferable skills, but I don't think we really appreciate what that means. Like someone might think that they have transferable skills if they can work in HR in fintech or HR in not for profit. That's not the full range of your
so, yeah.
transferable skills.
True.
It goes so much deeper than that. And I draw upon things every day that come from every career I've had.
Yeah.
And that is really wonderful, because you really start to appreciate how, you know, this is going to sound really like I'm blowing hot air at myself, but like how talented you are, how much you can have to offer. I really believe that if I were to go back into working for someone else at this point, I would be able to pitch myself in a completely different way, because I've really seen how the skills that I've learned and adapted have come into play in various different situations.
Yeah.
And that's been, yeah, an amazing thing to reflect on.
Yeah. And it's building up that evidence body of
Yeah.
success almost as you go. And we touched on this when we were talking about the archetype of the goody goody, where
Mm,
you just haven't had enough practice at failing things and
yeah.
then getting back up. Whereas when you are going through different roles and picking up those skills, even if it doesn't seem like it's immediately going to be applicable, like you do carry that with you. It's more value that you can add into different spaces that you end up in. So those transferable skills, I really like how you describe them, because it's not surface level. Like we talk about them a lot. It's not just things that you can throw on your CV. It's literally how you apply them and
Yeah.
how much you can leverage them in completely different spaces and in completely different ways. It can be such a value adding thing. So yeah, I completely agree with you there.
Absolutely. And I love that word you use, leveraging. It's not just writing it down on a piece of paper and knowing that you can, it's really being able to showcase to yourself. And if you're in an interview process or like pitching process or funding process, to others, how you leverage them, how you turn a skill like communication, which is probably one of the most generic things that we can ever put on a CV,
Yeah.
into something that only you can do in this particular way. And that's, I think, something, like you said, through a series of failures, successes, challenges, changes, and pivots, you really start to understand in a way more kind of complex way, which means you start to understand yourself more, which is when someone asks you, what do? You can answer it way more eloquently
Yes.
than ever before.
Yeah, because it starts being context dependent. It starts being
Yeah.
more of an internal part of your intrinsic approach to things. And I think that when that happens, that's when you know that it's then something you're going to carry with you and be able to add value in other contexts.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's that how we can, even if we're not doing little pivots, how we use our skills to help us pivot into loads of different situations.
Going from when you were in your full-time 9 to 5 role to now,
Mm.
how do you think your definition of success has changed?
Oh, that is such a good question. I think my definition of success when I was working in my 9 to 5 was very much based on what I perceived other people to be thinking about what I was doing, whether
Mm,
that be clients, bosses, colleagues.
yeah.
It was, do other people think I'm doing a good job?
Mm,
Whereas I feel like now it's more related to what we spoke about earlier in terms of, am I being the person that can take this thing to the next level?
yeah.
I know I'm good at my job
Yeah.
now, and that's a nice feeling. It's not something I always had, but I know that I'm good at my job now. But it's, am I continually pushing myself to the next step and the next phase? And what does that look like? Who does she look like?
That's such a brilliant way to look at it, thinking future focused. What does she look like? What does she do?
Mm,
How does she show up? And
yeah,
then using that to conform what you do today to
yeah,
make sure that you are being that person. That's quite a useful way, particularly if you're going through a pivot. It's quite a useful way to think about that to help you like navigate how you should start to show up in order to
mm,
become the person who is able to exist in the space that you're trying to pivot into.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's way less about these milestones that we're constantly trying to hit when we're in careers of like,
Yeah.
it's the next pay level or a bonus or responsibility or a title. And like, literally don't get me started on job titles. I think they're the most
Yes.
ridiculous things ever. They're all of these kind of status-based things that I think we often associate with success. Whereas I definitely feel like my feelings of success come a lot more around the type of person I'm being or feel like I can be or want to grow into. And when you start, obviously you can set goals that are about these targets and that's great, but also that sense, imagining that person and really becoming in tune with them, I think it's much more accessible now. You know, I know there's lots of people either love manifesting or don't love manifesting or don't know what manifesting is. Sort of doesn't really matter. But if you can imagine who that person is, how do they show up, what do they wear, what do they look like, how do they present themselves and speak, you can access those things now. That doesn't have to be in the future. So much of that we can bring into today. And I think that also becomes really motivating, that success isn't something that has to be far away. It can be a daily thing that we commit to.
It's in the small decisions, isn't it? It's really,
Absolutely.
because those are the things that then turn into your day to day. You know, it's the everyday things that you choose and things that you choose not to do, and the habits that you form and the habits that you break, and that's inevitably what becomes your life.
I'm gonna do a quick shout out for Atomic Habits for anyone who hasn't read it, which basically just describes that process. Love that book.
That book is on my bookshelf.
Yeah, I thought it might be. It's such a classic, but it is also so well worth a read, or even just to sign up to his mailing list is great actually.
Yes, we're so in
Yeah,
tune.
I know. Great minds.
I read his articles all the time, and they're quite short, which I quite like because it's easy to read it on a commute or something. But the messaging I always find really useful to reflect on.
Yeah, it's a great one.
So we've talked a lot about kind of the successes, and you've obviously done an incredible job directionally and navigating your pivot to like landing where you are now. But obviously it's not all sunshine and rainbows. What's one mistake that you can recall during this journey so far, and what happened? How did you recover?
Oh, that's a great question.
And it can be big or small. It doesn't have to be anything dramatic, but it's just something that altered your thinking.
Yeah. I think from that perspective, from altering my thinking, I think it's worth sort of sharing that the reason that I pivoted from coaching into working with Alex and growing Amplified wasn't only because he really needed my support, but because my coaching business wasn't, scaling in the way that I wanted it to, that was going to be sustainable. I had a year of running it and making just enough money to be able to live on, but that wasn't really the vision of success that I had for myself in terms of my own financial goals, of the lifestyle I wanted to be able to have, because it's all very well doing something that you love, and coaching is more of a vocation than just a job, if that is such a thing. But it also needs to be part of a bigger picture. And actually the bigger picture was, I would like to go on a guilt-free holiday, and I would like to be able to go to friends' birthday dinners and not feel anxious about what the bill's going to be, or not drink because I don't want to pay for alcohol and then be in that horrible situation where everyone's splitting the bill anyway, and all of those things. And that was starting to, affect my confidence a bit. And you really don't want to be in a position as a coach. You don't want to feel like you're coaching people for the money, because that's completely misaligned with the whole process. Yet it is still a transaction. It is still a professional arrangement. And so I was, I suppose, not fully succeeding in the way that I wanted to, or the way that I felt I needed to also match the goals that I had in life. And so the opportunity to work with Alex came as another pivot that would potentially just go along the side, but then actually became such an opportunity that it meant I decided to hang up my coaching boots and fully commit to this. And that was quite a big process, and something that I resisted actually for quite a long time. Alex was making subtle hints from the very beginning about how great it would be to work together. What he really needed was someone who was experienced at managing partnerships and knew about marketing, and that just so happened to be my exact background of my previous careers. And so there was an element, I think, for him that was like, well, this just makes sense. This is totally inevitable.
But it's not just a practical decision. There's a lot of emotion in that. A
lot of emotions wrapped up in it. And the biggest one was, well, for the past year, people have been hearing me on Instagram and LinkedIn and shouting as much as I possibly can about what I'm doing and how I can support. And that's all that's all going to change. And what are people going to think? And that's the, obviously the thing that often our fears come back to are, what are people going to think? And I'd done so much unlearning about not caring what people thought when I was making a really active decision to go into coaching. But then the decision to come out of it was a lot more protracted because I felt like that was something that kept on holding me back, or that fear of, people are going to know that this wasn't as successful as it could have been. And that was really interesting. And I think it did take quite a lot of, I suppose, redefining what my role was going to be in this company, how not coaching external clients didn't mean the end of that experience, didn't mean the end of coaching, how I could continue to use the skills that I loved to use so much in this new context of running a business. And how I would then define the next stage of my career. And I think the thing that really settled me and that I came back to was like, this doesn't have to be the end. I can come back to this. I will always, if I maintain my practice and my certifications and things, I will always have this qualification that allows me to do this thing that I find so valuable, which is coaching. And there are so many contexts in life in which I could pursue that avenue again in the future, and allowing it to be, I think, sometimes pivots are made really directly, very clearly. And sometimes it's like, okay, this is the way that the river is flowing and we're going with it. I'm not going to resist it. And I did resist it for a bit. And it was really tricky because Alex was like, why are you fighting this? This is a great opportunity. We've got two businesses, one's kicking off. Let's go for it. But again, I think it's building that confidence in self to go, okay, I'm going to let go and I'm going to go with this. That took me a while.
But I want to thank you for being so transparent with that, because I think, God, it hits the nail on the head so well. And I think there's something about when you make a big pivot, there's almost this, especially if it's the first one you've made, right? There's something about pouring all of yourself into it, making it like part of your identity. If you're jumping in both feet, you're talking about it, your personal brand is wrapped up in it, but all you've talked about for the last year, it becomes so deeply entrenched in your psyche almost, and it's then part of your personality. And to then have to detach from that in any way, I think can feel like quite an intrusive thing. So when you're describing that, it took you a while to mentally become okay with doing that. And even at the point when you're okay with doing that, it's like a negotiation with yourself of, okay, don't worry, we can come back to this if we want to. And it's that, I think it's just so accurate and such a good depiction of a lot of people's experiences, even if it's not to do with a big pivot, even if it's just that hobby, that thing you've been known for since you were in uni, or that thing you've always done that people know you for, just that shift in becoming something different, becoming a person who now wants to do something else. I think it's really difficult, and we don't talk about that enough, because that can end up becoming such a barrier to doing the next thing. I know I've personally felt it. I used to be an author, and I did that for a while when I was ready to then go into business and tech. That was a whole thing. And then again, when I pivoted into cybersecurity, I'm going through it now. It's one of those things I think I've become more comfortable with. The understanding for me has come back to, okay, the thing that you do isn't the value thing. You are the thing. You are the value thing. So whatever you do and whatever you want to apply yourself to, people will accept that. People will be okay. Everyone's going to be fine. Just be and just do the thing and see where it takes you. And you don't lose anything from doing that. That year that you've spent talking about coaching, nothing's taken away from you because you're now doing something else,
Exactly. And I think the constant through all of that is you. Just because your external output is different doesn't mean that how you're approaching it, who you are, like you said, we wrap up so much of our identity with our jobs, whether we're in, employed, self-employed, whatever. It becomes the thing that we default to. And that puts us in a risky position because we forget that we're so much more than that. It really reminds me of my mum was always so impressed with, I think it was a friend that she grew up with at school. Her mum started off as I think she worked in a shop for a bit, and then she trained to become a nurse and worked as a nurse for many years. And then she left and she retrained and she became a lawyer. And she went through
I love that.
so many pivots, so many career changes. And she was someone that was rolling with the times, whether that was what she felt like she needed in terms of her personal progression, what her family needed in terms of financial support, and was looking for those opportunities. And I think we do not live in a stagnant world. So why should our careers be at one line constantly? They shouldn't. We've got to be able to roll with what comes our way and seek opportunities, even if that means that they are outside of who we thought we were going to be. It
Yeah.
was, I think we finding that identity really comforting. But again, we talked about the comfort zone and how that can be something that holds us back so much.
Yeah. There's something about the pivot that means you have to relinquish control a little
Yeah,
bit. You know,
100%.
and because you don't quite know it's where you're going to land and where you're going to end up. All you can do is control the controllables
Yeah.
and keep showing up and keep moving forward, doing what it is you need to do and going with it.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much that we can't control, but we can control our response to it. That's all we can hope for, really.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you've got like a billion things going on that are so exciting. But over the next 6 to 12 months, what is exciting for you? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm going to be making a very large pivot in the next 6 to 12 months, and that I will be becoming a mother, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Welcoming our little baby boy. So I'm incredibly excited about that. I think alongside that, we keep on talking about we're having a baby, but we also have a business baby. And our business baby is we've just completed our first proper financial year as a limited company. So we have been running it for 2 years, but as a proper entity, it's been the past year. It's had incredible growth in that time. It was just Alex, then it was Alex and I. Now we're a team of 6. So we've really scaled. And so I think the thing that I am most excited about now is being able to see members of our team grow into the roles that Alex and I have been fulfilling for such a long time, and see them develop these skills and the confidence in their careers. I mentioned that we had 2 people who are ex-TAs. This is their first time working in marketing in an agency, and just in the past 6 to 9 months, how much they've grown has been incredible to see. It's it genuinely is the most rewarding part of what we do. Obviously success for our clients as well, but seeing the team just flourish and take on responsibilities and challenges that they may not have thought possible a few months ago. And I think with going on maternity leave for a decent part of that 6 to 12 months, although as much maternity leave as one can take when you own the business, it will be popping in at lunchtimes and things. But really experiencing what it's like to kind of let go of those reins a little bit and see how people can run with it. And I'm really excited to see how that can allow us to then grow the business further, because obviously when you're first starting out, you start to bring people on, it's really hard to let go. You become a control freak about
thing again, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
About absolutely everything. But we have ambitions for how we would like to scale, and that involves building a team that we really trust to do the things that we used to do without us having to micromanage, which we already don't do and try and avoid at all costs. But I think just by the nature of not being there, that will happen more, and I'm excited to see what that brings.
Oh, I'm so excited to watch how it all plays out. I also want to shout out, you guys won your first award.
Yes.
The best startup of the year in Kingston.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Gosh, when you really pour yourself into something and then you start to see all those dots connecting and that recognition starts to come through. I saw that and I remember just feeling so proud of you. And so congratulations to you guys on that. I'm sure there's more to come.
Oh, thank you. No, it was such a lovely experience. It was one of those things that I do because I'm love a bit of self-reflection. This is an opportunity for us to just take a moment, even just doing an application like that, take a moment and think about what we've done, because it's so rare that you stop and really appreciate that, especially when you're just in the thick of it each and every day.
Focus on the next thing and then the next
thing. Exactly. Yeah, you don't take time, apart from maybe the odd lunch or drink after work, to celebrate the achievements and what those things mean. And it's so important in whatever context we're in, that we just remind ourselves of the work that we've done and what we have achieved. And so, to actually have it be recognised by our peers and to have won was amazing. And Alex and I weren't able to be at the award ceremony because we were away. So Chloe and Sarah, who work with us, who went to the ceremony, didn't know if we would be winning or not. And the call that we got from them was just the best moment of the year by far. Because you go to these things and you're like, it's lovely that we've been shortlisted. We won't get our hopes up. We're not going to win. We're not going to win. And to have that, and I think they went there with that thought and were so shocked and so excited, and that just absolutely beamed through them. We got this wonderful video call from them, and it was just amazing. And that really brought it home of how proud we should be of ourselves, but how lovely it is to see our team take pride in what they do and how far we've come as a company as well.
Absolutely. And the pivot into becoming a mum, that's going to be huge. It's one of those things. I was talking to someone earlier today, actually. When you're a parent and you're working, it's such a new dynamic, isn't it? There's so much to juggle and think about, and also be excited about. It is that kind of balancing act a little bit. So I'm really excited to see how you start to navigate that. I'm sure you'll be fantastic.
I think, yeah, that definitely probably going to be the biggest challenge yet. I think we can safely say that. I really remember being at a particular company where there were a lot of working mothers and just thinking how incredible these women were. They hit like another, we've been talking about levels and like leveling ourselves up.
Yeah.
They just hit a plane that I still don't know how that's possible, but they got there. And so I'm quite excited to see what this kind of like mothering superpower brings. And you talked about making decisions. I think that's probably one of the ways in which parenting can just hone your decision making abilities. There is not time to procrastinate. There's not time to faff about. We are getting shit done in the limited time that we have. And I think that is why working parents and working mothers to a large extent are such a powerful force in business. And the skills, like we said, there's no such thing as bad experience. So the time that we have off raising our children is actually time that we're learning incredible skills that can transfer into business. So yeah, I'm excited for the leveling up, even though it comes with a severe lack of sleep, I'm told.
Yeah, that's what I hear. That's what I hear. Brilliant. Last question then. Obviously, you're a massive advocate for that self-investment and making sure that you're always learning, upskilling, all of that good stuff. Are there any resources that you would recommend for someone who is about to kick off their pivot journey or is currently in their pivot journey that you think would really help?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'll say is that like I love podcasts, and I do just think that having someone in your ear constantly inspiring you is great. So listening to stories of other people pivoting was something that I became addicted to. I just found it so helpful because it's the good, the bad, the ugly. You want to know it all. And so I think, having a practice where you listen to other people's pivoting stories is really important. The one resource that I pretty much recommend to absolutely everyone, no matter what they're doing or whatever phase they're at, is a book called Designing Your Life. And it's by two guys called, I think they're Bill Barnett and Dave Evans. I'm sorry if I've gotten the Bill one wrong, but they're two Stanford professors who ran a course about life design, and it's based on design thinking principles. And it's really fantastic because it gets you to look at your skills, at the things that you enjoy, at the areas where you like to spend your energy and your time and your effort. But then it gets you to create what they call Odyssey plans, which are different versions of the typical 5-year life plan. It's more of a creative process of thinking about what life would be like in 3 situations. If I carried on what I was doing now, if the thing I was doing now couldn't exist, like if I couldn't do work in marketing, or if I couldn't have this business, what would I do? And then what would you do if kind of time, money, and people's expectations was of no consideration? So it's a really creative, guided process to think about your life from multiple angles, because I really feel like we can get obsessed with one path and seeing that it's like the sliding doors activity. There are so many different pathways that we could take to lead us to different versions of happiness in our life. And I just think it's a fantastic book, whether you're pivoting, looking for a job, or actually, as I said before, not looking for a job, but want to know where your options could take you.
That's brilliant. Even as you've asked those 3 questions, you're better able to detach from the idea that you have, whatever that idea is. And I think that's the difficulty sometimes. Once you become wedded to something, it's hard to then look at it from a different perspective. I'm going to buy that book. Thank you for that.
It's really good. I've recommended it to so many people. The activities are great. It's a pretty short read, but it's a lot of actions to take. And so what I would say is people often read a book, oh, that's great, and then they put it down. I would read it and do the actions and not move on until you've finished doing those actions.
Absolutely. No, I'm going to buy that. I will send you a message about what I think about it.
Yes, let me know how your Odyssey plans turn out. It's so fun as well. They encourage doodles and like other creative things. You could do it on Canva. If you're very visual, I'm sure there are so many different ways you could create it to make it feel really exciting. And it's kind of weird. I did one and lots of the things that I wanted happened, and that was a weird experience.
Manifesting.
Absolutely. We're just putting the, for me, manifesting is literally just sort of putting the idea out there so that our brains conceive of it, and then we sort of subconsciously start working towards these things.
Incredible. So you've answered all of my questions, and I think we've well and truly picked your brain today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for all of the gems and the words of wisdom and being so honest and transparent with your journey and your story. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your time. Just a huge thank you.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I always find conversations like this so stimulating for myself to reflect on these things. And, I think, yeah, self-reflection is such an important process and it's always really helpful. It felt like a coaching session for me. So this is great. Thank you.
Well, it felt like one for me too. So really.
Co-coaching, it's the way forward.